Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me if I speak about this volume? Excellent. Excellent. Well, that's useful because the disclaimer has already been given. I am of the University of Dundee as of 2 weeks ago, but very much this is a project that I did while I was at the University of Aberdeen and is a project that's ongoing there now. So, we'll start off with a simple one, what the Learners Toolkit's all about. Now, the Learners Toolkit was a project that's actually rather simple. The idea is basically to start off with people, staff, students, and find out what it is they want to achieve. Their degrees, providing their services, that kind of thing. And then from there, start going, well, what content can we make for them? What content can we give them to help them on that journey to get the bigger things they're trying to achieve? And then finally, the toolkit is about finding a way to deliver that content to those people. So good quality content based on what people actually need, delivered to them in the way they need it, the time they need it, as easily as possible. And then taking all of these three elements and making it work. Simple. Now, I'll go a bit back in time to the beginning. Excuse my Prezi-like seasickness. My history back at the University of Aberdeen was actually in assistive technology. So I supported students with disabilities, learning differences, that kind of thing, through the use of technology. Now, one of my big frustrations in doing that is that we never had time to back up our face-to-face teaching. Now, there's going to be a discussion later on this afternoon all about where training has its place and where things like this has its place. And to me, it was that I needed more time to do the things that a human can do and have technology doing the things that technology is good at doing and finding them a way to work together. So that's where I was coming from with the Learners Toolkit when we first started talking about it. Another big element was the training and documentation team. They were much of a similar mind, that they were finding new ways and trying to find new ways to connect to people, support people, and get them to achieve what they need to achieve. So we bashed some ideas together, and we came up with an initial proposal. Now, whether that proposal was amazingly wonderful or it was just complete luck that we presented it at the right time, there happened to be a little bit of money there, we actually got the go-ahead to start and see where we wanted to go, where we were going to go with this idea. Now we're on to our first lesson, because this is mostly about the lessons, less about the history. When we put the proposal, it was all about putting people first. Now, many of you might recognize this as design thinking, but the empathize bit, the speaking about people, human beings. So much training, so much documentation is done from the point of view of, here's new tech, we're rolling it out, let's document it, write it down in a robotic kind of step-by-step sort of manner. We wanted to flip that round and start with people and go, what is it you want to achieve? And how do you want to be supported in achieving that? So the first lesson we took with the proposal was we wanted everything to start with people. Moving on, that initial proposal got us a grade 4 IT trainer for 9 months. Now this person basically enabled the entire project to happen. The biggest reason is we managed to get that person and fence her off so that nobody else could come along and start adding to their workload, start diverting them to the million other things that a university wants you to achieve and do. This person was allowed space to innovate, to take the ideas we had but never had time to do anything with and make it work. Now, the best thing about this person in particular was they were a fresh graduate out of Grey School of Art at RGU, doing, I've forgotten exactly what the course is, basically digital communications. They could take Adobe Creative Suite and actually do things with it. So that second lesson was all about finding a way to actually make things happening and making the space for that. Now, it seems like a simple thing, but it's something I think that gets neglected. Too many good ideas get crushed by workload. You keep doing the workload, you never actually improve. So on to that, this person was in post for a while, and we worked together to make a prototype, both prototyping the actual content and prototyping the actual platform that we were going to put it out on. Now, the platform we started off with was the university's VLE, which is a Blackboard-based system at Aberdeen. And we fought with it. We kept fighting with it. Not particularly saying something specific about Blackboard itself, but in this situation, it didn't work for us. It was a bad platform for getting the content we were making to the people, how they wanted it, when they wanted it. There were too many restrictions. We also couldn't make it in the way we wanted to make it. We couldn't present it in the way we wanted because the technology, the tool itself, was trying to make us conform to it. So lesson number 3 is very much the idea. I'm a big fan of lean and things like that, but technology is there to serve us and what we do. And I'm glad to see, I was thinking about reflecting on what we've heard already this morning. There's less talk about actual technology and it's more talk about people, because the technology's fine. It's all about us working out how we can use the technology. And too much in universities, certainly in my experience, technology will be put out there and you'll be told conform yourself to that technology. You will adapt to that technology to achieve what you want to do, as opposed to I'm going to take the technology that works for me and run with it. Moving on, we rejected the Blackboard option, and essentially we went for broke and decided to build entirely our own thing. Now, this was quite a big decision in retrospect. Nobody questioned it at the time, but looking back, we basically abandoned a few months' worth of work and went in a completely different direction. Pivoting, common practice or a common word in the realms of startups and entrepreneurship. Basically, we totally changed direction. We undid everything we'd done over the last couple of months and decided to do something else. If we hadn't done that, we'd still be fighting with the technology that we were fenced in to use. If we hadn't done that, we wouldn't have learned anything. We'd have just carried on accepting all the things that weren't working for us. But the fact that we did change direction really made a big difference, because it wasn't wasted time going down a different path. It taught us more about what we needed. We didn't start this project. I didn't sit down and talk to people and say, you know what, I've got the perfect idea and we're going to do exactly this and here's the Gantt chart to follow. No, none of that. Which again is amazing that we actually got the funding for the post and things based on that. But we were allowed to experiment, and because we were allowed to experiment, we were allowed to learn. Because we were allowed to learn, we managed to change direction and get a better compass bearing. Moving on, we had an initial launch just last September. So this project moved very, very quickly. And then we faced this kind of thing. We had our custom-built platform, and we thought, this is great, this is wonderful. We started going, right, how do we market it? How do we get it out there? How do we get people to start engaging with it and telling us all that they like about it and what they don't like about it, and how do we spread the word? And this was mainly focused at freshers at this point. And these freshers were coming in September, and they were learning how to pay rent, how to cook for themselves, how to find the million different services that all have completely different locations and completely different methods of communicating to you in the university. And we added to that noise. One of the big pieces of feedback we actually got on it, the most negative piece of feedback is, to paraphrase, just another system that we have to learn in order to get things done or find out about anything. We'd added to the problem with that. But also from the marketing point of view, how are you supposed to sell something to people that are already flooded with something? I want to say I can have a solution for that, give you a solution for that. It wasn't really, although some of the following lessons help, I think. So lessons learned from the initial launch? Never ever assume. Some of the things that went wrong, as I said, the noise factor. Another thing was I hesitated when releasing it and decided, no, with all this noise, but also because of the lack of content and things, because this was all fresh and new, I backed off on the trying to push it. I backed off on trying to sell it. And a large amount of that was just because I didn't think it was ready. Because as we released it, we were suddenly seeing all of the flaws and things. We haven't tested this. We haven't gone, do people really want this? We hadn't got a minimum viable product, which is the kind of term with that. We didn't go out and test that. We didn't have time. We were just going agile, hell to leather, and just went for it. So there were a lot of regrets we had based on time. So the big lesson with this is don't be afraid to test your ideas. It's another thing. And in the same way as don't be afraid to change direction, don't be afraid to make a little version of what you want to do and give it a try. But there's too much emphasis, too much pressure on, we have this problem, you will produce the solution will be released, and everything will be wonderful. Because that's what the PowerPoint slides we're presenting to our seniors are supposed to say. And they're supposed to promise wonderful things. They're not supposed to say, oh, we might change some directions, we'll learn some things, we'll do things differently, we're going to sit down with students and we'll talk about it and stuff, and maybe we'll come up with things. When are you going to get it finished? I don't know. It depends what we find out as we release things, as we talk to people about things. So never assume you know what you're doing. Always make space to test it. And then we got to version 3, which is not actually out yet. And I'll speak specifically about the versions in just a second. But this brings to the last lesson from my point of view about all of the things I've spoken before. All can get summed up in this. Playing the long game. As I said before, there's a lot of demands to release perfect solutions that fix something so somebody can tick off. That strategic priority is done. Hooray. The long game's what it's all about. So much about what's been discussed today has been referencing how it's more about culture than specific tools, that it's more about trying to cope with the change that's happening outside of our control, because we can't control it. Like the question earlier about, do you know what your students are actually using? Like my answer to that is, they're always using the thing that you've only just figured out about. Playing the long game is all about not coming up with a single perfect solution, not making an assumption or anything like that. Playing the long game is about going, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what I need, I don't know what my audience is using, but I can put things in place to slowly get better with each passing month. Keep testing things, keep changing direction when that's needed, all of those kind of things. Now with the Learners Toolkit, we very much did that. And we were allowed the space to do that, which in my experience is rare. And I greatly appreciated the opportunity for that. So the platform itself. Version 1, this is the Blackboard version. This was the prototype that we rejected. Actually doesn't look that bad. But essentially, those are hacked web pages inside the containing VLE. It wasn't something that could be scaled. It wasn't something that could be easily documented to whoever came along and did it next. We didn't like it. We changed our minds. This was the first custom thing we've made. Now, I don't know if anybody has already looked at the toolkit. The toolkit is actually open to be looked at. If you go to the Miro Award site on the UCISA website, I believe there's a link to it there. So it was all about making our own visual appeal, trying to make information get to people as easily as possible. And then version 3 took the lessons from both of them and made it better and better and better, I think, anyway. But the big thing about this is this was in the space of a year. This version hasn't been released as of yet, but it's going to be very soon, I believe. But within a year, we managed to go from doing something on Blackboard to building entirely our own platform, and then getting feedback about that initial platform and making an entire new version. Subtle changes in this one, but they were very meaningful changes. Meaningful changes like the search. People had reflected that our site was originally too visual, too many icons, things like that. So we went and looked at something similar, and we looked at app stores. App stores contain lots and lots and lots of things, and it's difficult to decipher what thing you're looking at. And then we went, they've got both visual cues, little bit of words giving somebody a hint about what happens. Subtle change, but a change that's made a big difference. This is the actual content page whenever you get down to something. And it looks really nice, but it's very simple. We adopted more of a video-first kind of point of view. We can have playlists in there, you can have downloads, you can have links, everything in there, but all it is just one page containing a bunch of media, whatever media you want to do. It's nothing especially complicated about it. But going back to the person we got out of Grays, they managed to make it all look very nice and all usable. But getting to this stage only happened because we were allowed to keep trying and keep moving and keep changing. Content-wise, well, the toolkit contains whiteboard animations, like up in the top. Really fancy. People really, really liked it. Took a very, very long way to do, so I believe that's reserved for special clients or special content. down here you've got the more usual sort of screen capture type how-tos and things like that. And then the big one up there, that there's actually another video that we did for the poster thing for the UCISA 2016 in February, I think it was, which again you can look at on the UCISA website, explaining the process of why digital animation became something that was really important to us. We only discovered that about November, I think, before Christmas. Digital animation gave us the ability to create really high quality videos really quickly, because it's like a puppet show. Once you've made the assets, you don't need to make them again. You just take the puppets out again for a new video and animate them in a slightly different way with different words. It becomes quick and easy. So the toolkit's evolved both in terms of the platform, and it's evolved in terms of the content that's able to be made. And as for the future, well, I'm not part of that, but I'm hoping, and from the colleagues that I left that I know are incredibly capable, and will take whatever input I had to it and make it better and better. It's all about continuing the process of analysing what was done, making it a little bit better, little by little. So that was the story of the Learners Toolkit and the lessons I learned from it. Questions? Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. The core team is 1.5 people. Oh yeah, sorry. The question was how many people were involved in getting it here. The core team was essentially 1.5 people. I was the half because I also had team leadership responsibilities for the assistive technology team. But we also had input from people like the training and documentation team. An awful lot of the content came from their documentation that was being transformed in it. But there weren't that many people involved. And to be honest, there was an element of we managed to do what we did because we were this little team and we didn't get involved in the machine of the larger thing. We didn't get project managed. We didn't get involved with relationship management or anything like that. And that worked for us because we were allowed just a small unit to just lock our door and get on with making stuff. And it became, because of that, it allowed it to be a work of passion, really. I've left Aberdeen University, but I will always remember the Learners Toolkit and the lessons it's taught me. It was fun to do, and I think that's reflected certainly in how it looks. Oh. Will I let you choose the people?
So you moved away from Blackboard because
yes.
You found it difficult to maintain it and to document it. With your own custom version, how is that maintained? Is it easy to, is it a series of HTML pages or?
Well, we were really lucky. Actually, when I said 1.5 people, I missed out. I completely forgot about one person from the web team who did the actual building of the platform. They actually put it together, the initial version, in 2 months, which was quite incredible. They also, well, one person also, while they were doing the coding and working with us on the coding, managed to make a graphic interface back-end. It was based on the old CMS that the university used to use for its old website, which was still running and up. So they managed to configure that so that it was a relatively easy thing for people to upload. And what I believe, speaking about the future now, is that other people will start being allowed to put stuff in so that it's not reliant on just this one core person, essentially, uploading things. Yeah.
I think you said I think it was agile hell for leather. But I'm just, just reflecting on that. I think sometimes this concept of building something big and huge and waiting until it's finished before it's released is a model that we've often used in HE and FE, whereas using the kind of agile methodology and kind of like, let's just get something out there and then iterate, depending on feedback from end users, to me sounds like a much more modern approach in terms of doing it. Was that the sort of kind of concept that came out?
I like studying lean and agile and things is kind of a hobby of mine because they just chimed with me. Like the Lean Startup speaks about, if anybody's read that book, I gave a quote from it, or a diagram from it. It speaks about how you don't know what people want. People don't know what people want either. If you go and ask, I'm sure somebody said, if you go and ask a student what they want, they'll say, I want a machine that can download matrix style all the information into my head. It's like, okay, we'll try and build that. You've got to release things. You've got to put out stuff that's the minimum viable product, as in it's functional and tests the functionality without too much effort being put into it, so that not only can you explore what a person's doing with it, but so that they can ask, oh, hang on, this is doing something for me. This is working. I never thought about this. Or they come up with the idea after going, that was nice, but it gave me an idea that in my lectures I need to do Y. That kind of thing. So putting stuff out there is hugely important. And not being afraid for it being messy. It doesn't matter.
I'm just interested as to whether, did it start off as being just about digital capabilities, or is it still just about digital capabilities, or has it proved to be a model that's kind of been used and other people have taken the idea in other areas of learner support, so in other kinds of professional services areas?
There was what I wrote down on the initial proposals, which was framing it in a specifically targeted way. But essentially the model was about creating nice resources rapidly, without having to spend years and years making them with an expensive team, and delivering them quickly. That's universal. It's universally has universal potential. So while I was still there, we'd been talking to the library for putting how to take out a book, talking to the International Student Office, and they had started using it, and there's some of their videos up there about supporting their students pre-access and that kind of thing. Anything that fits the model of, it's almost like hints and tips. I always spoke about the idea that the toolkit was about delivering the kind of materials that allow people to jump in, learn the little bits and pieces they need, and then get on with the bigger things. And that fits across the board for university, because universities are full of a million little things that people need to use. So the model while I was there definitely was starting to expand and generate interest beyond just digital. Which is great, because then the digital stuff isn't pigeonholed somewhere in, this is the digital area, this is the student support area. It's good.